Illinois!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Wrap Up. I'm your host, Nick Buckler. With me, as always, Dan Myers. And Dan, we have a lot of stuff to cover this week. We're going to start with the Detroit Lions. They have to make cuts this week. And coming off of their third preseason game, it was a win against the Jacksonville Jaguars on Friday night. They win that one 22-17. And a guy that a lot of people think should make this team is the running back who forced his way into the end zone in the fourth quarter with about 1:41 seconds left. The guy out of South Dakota State, running back Zach Zenner. But for me, I think there's a lot of people ahead of him in the running back depth chart, and I don't know if maybe the time is yet for him, but definitely to stash him on the practice squad. But he's one of many that are battling for a job right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you watch anything like Hard Knocks, you have to understand that there's a lot to learn in and off the field. Definitely, and he could be ready, but I think having him stashed to the side would be a terrific idea. Just there's a lot more people ahead of him that could actually take the spot, but definitely needs to learn some more about the game. But he has a lot of potential to show that he's actually NFL ready.
He really does, and guys in that mashup of running backs, if you will, are guys like obviously Amir Abdullah, the rookie from Nebraska, who a lot of people think are going to eventually be the starting running back. Joique Bell's coming off injury. He expects to carry most of the load, as he did last year, even though he was with Reggie Bush. But I think Abdullah and Bell will be a good kind of combination of running backs. But at the same time, you have a guy like Theo Riddick in the backfield, who right now is listed as the number one on the depth chart. He'll be now a third-year player out of Notre Dame. He can catch passes. He can line up in the slot. He's a guy that I think should get more playing time this year. And then you got a guy who made a name for himself last year, George Wynn, who played on the practice squad for the last 2 seasons. And he's a guy that I think shouldn't lose his job because someone else has come up. But he's a guy that I think should definitely be in the running of keeping his job.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a tough spot, too, is every year, especially when the draft comes around, you're going to have that opportunity, well, not opportunity, but, that potential to actually lose your spot, and you have to be ready for that. And, unfortunately, he might lose the spot, but we'll see.
Yeah, he's a guy who also can play a lot on special teams, and that's why I think he's really valuable to the Lions, because they've been up and down on special teams. They've been horrible in punt coverage and kick coverage in years past. And I think he's a guy who's been a consistent variable for them the last couple seasons. And although Zach Zenner has been great, but look at who he's playing against. He's playing late in fourth quarters of preseason games against the other team's third-string, fourth-string guys. Let's see how he fares against the team starters. Sure, he played a little bit more in the beginning against Jacksonville, but okay, put him in there this week. I don't think he's going to get cut before Thursday's game against the Bills. I think he's definitely right in the running. But they have to cut down to their final 53-man roster by Saturday at noon. And I think he's a guy who's definitely on the bubble with a guy who I think is right on the bubble as well as the wide receiver Greg Salas. He had a great first game against the Jets. He's found the end zone he's teamed up with Dan Orlovsky, who's going to be a really good backup for them. But the wide receivers are kind of bunched up as well. There's 7 guys who are battling for likely 5 or 6 spots. And obviously you have Calvin Johnson. He's making the team. Here's my shoo-ins. Let's make it easy. Calvin Johnson, obviously. Golden Tate. Corey Fuller. I think Lance Moore will make it. He's made his career with Drew Brees in New Orleans. Last year with Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. And he was a depth pickup for the Lions. I think he's going to be a deep threat. I really like what the Lions did by signing him. And then Jeremy Ross, who was the punt and kick returner last year. I think he's going to make the team as well. And then you get rookie T.J. Jones. He's an explosive wide receiver and with a lot of speed. And then obviously Greg Salas. Those 2 guys are more on the outside looking in. However, I do think they both have very realistic shots of making the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've showed great potential, too. Even just reading any articles the beat writers online, newspaper, what have you, and they sound promising. And like you said, though, that they are on the outside looking in, and we'll see how that goes.
Another guy who really is in the outside looking in, Ryan Broyles, morning, he was cut just 2 days after asking to be released, after he was only in for 22 snaps in Friday's win against Jacksonville. And he's a guy who really never fit into Jim Caldwell's offense. And he's really been plagued by injury. He was a second-round pick in 2012, 54th overall from Oklahoma State. And at the time, I thought this could be a real good draft pick, a big, well, he's not big, but an explosive slot receiver. And then they go and they get Golden Tate, and then they just build kind of around him, and he never really fit in. He tore his Achilles or ruptured his Achilles in his first season. He only had 8 receptions in 2013, and then last year in 2014, he only had 2 catches for 25 yards. Never really fit in, and he's a guy making over $1 million a year. Definitely the right thing to do by cutting him. It's unfortunate to see because he was a guy who had so much potential. But he joins a list of guys who are second-round picks of the Lions who are no longer with the team in recent years. You have Louis Delmas. Kyle Van Noy might as well not even be on the team. We'll get to him later. Looks like he's going to miss a good portion of the year again this year, and a linebacker that they were high on from last year, obviously, his draft. And guys like that, Ryan Broyles, and the list goes on. But just kind of bad management in hindsight, I guess, if you will, from a draft standpoint. But he asked for his release, and just, I mean, give him what he wants because he's not fitting in here.
Right, absolutely. And on the top of that, to have Achilles problems, that's always gonna it's like a head injury. It's always gonna be in the back of your mind. It never really goes away. It's a pain that fortunately very few people have to feel because it's very, very bad. But yeah, like that could be a big issue. Unfortunately, we took a hit with the $1 million, but what can you do? But if he's gone, at least he's not going to hurt the team this way.
Exactly. Let's move on now to. But first, actually, in 2013, he did tear his ACL as well. Okay. So his injury is it's about time. Snip him loose. Best of luck to him wherever he does end up, if he ends up anywhere. Let's move on to the tight end spot. On Monday, they made a trade for tight end from Tampa Bay, Tim Wright. He's an experienced guy who, again, they can use on special teams, maybe more of a blocking kind of guy. Reminds me a lot of a Pettigrew, although with a little bit better hands. But, I mean, I think you and me both have better hands than Pettigrew. But no, in a realistic standpoint, they traded for their backup kicker, Kyle Brinta, who kicked really well in preseason, but obviously he's not going to make the team. We have Matt Prater. And Tampa really doesn't know what they have at kicking right now, so they're going to try this Brinza guy out from the Lions and see what he's got, and they didn't really have a use for Tim Wright. And the Lions may not have a use for him either, but they're going to give him a shot Thursday against the Bills and see what he can bring to the table. Obviously, they already have their first-round pick from last year. Eric Ebron, they have Brandon Pettigrew, obviously, Big Joe Fourier, and now Tim Wright. So the tight end spot, there's some depth there, which we haven't seen in a few years.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the key word. There is depth there. And, there's solid names that, even going back to last year, they're making, key plays, great. But, what can you do? There's a lot of depth there, and it's going to be a solid line, and I expect a lot out of them this year.
Lack of depth, maybe a quarterback. Matthew Stafford and Dan Orlovsky are looking like the 2 quarterbacks this year. Looks like they're going to release Kellen Moore, the left-handed quarterback from Boise State. A lot of people were high on him. Last year he had a great preseason, but this year Dan Orlovsky's taking the bull by the horns, and it looks like he's going to be the backup quarterback, and they're going to use the third-string quarterback spot for maybe another depth player on defense or a depth offensive lineman or a guy they could use on special teams. And I really like that move. Obviously, if an injury happens, you could sign him or you could sign a veteran. And I really like the move to only go with 2 quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, that was a great move by the organization. Yeah, they definitely. It's just, to me, it's pointless. I mean, the last time we had 3 quarterbacks, it wasn't a good thing. It was almost like an omen for how the season was going to go. I mean, it's like, what do you expect to lose? 2 quarterbacks and resort to your third one? No. So if you don't need that position, just let it go and you'll figure out something else.
Exactly. Let's move on to a team who's plagued by a lot of trouble. Our baseball team, the Tigers, they were just swept in Toronto to the potent offense of the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays are a good team. Obviously, they picked up Troy Tulowitzki. They picked up David Price, obviously. And their offense already had Jose Bautista, Edwin Encarnacion, Josh Donaldson, one of the best third basemen around. And they just get mollywopped in every game. I'm going to steal a Terry Foster term right there.
That was good.
It was bad. They lose 5-3 on Friday, respectable. 15-1 on Saturday. 9-2 on Sunday. It's just same old song and dance, my friend. It's getting old. They're now 20 games behind the Royals for first place in the American League Central. Dead last behind Chicago and Cleveland. Cleveland surged all the way up to 3rd, but they're still 16. behind the Royals, and now the Tigers have dropped to a season low, 10 games below 500. Safe to say the season's over now for those of you who were hanging on like Bon Jovi, living on a prayer somehow, some way. The season's over, but a bright spot for them, obviously Miguel Cabrera, who's probably going to qualify for a batting title this year, to put a little bit of sprinkles on top of the lost season. J.D. Martinez has really earned his stripes. Kinsler of late's hitting over 400 in the last 2 months. It's incredible. But a guy who really has gotten his act together is Justin Verlander. On Wednesday night, he has a no-hitter into the 9th inning, and then Chris Iannetta doubles on the chalk. He was inches away, but he definitely got all of it. It wasn't a Texas leaguer or an infield single. Definitely a legit hit. Verlander was on. I felt like I was watching Justin Verlander from 2007. Fastball was electric. He was spotting his curveball, starting guys off with sliders. In the 8th inning, he had to go through, or no, it was the 7th inning. Either the 7th or the 8th inning, he had to go through Calhoun, Mike Trout, and Albert Pujols. He strikes out Trout and Pujols. Are you kidding me? JV was back. He was blowing it by guys at the chest, letter level at 97, 98 miles an hour. He was throwing harder as the game went on. The fans were behind him. It was electric at Comerica Park. But I don't know if I like what the TV stations are doing by putting no-hitter through X amount of innings. And they start doing that in about the 5th inning. And obviously, it has no effect of Justin Verlander giving up a hit. But it's the whole, don't say the word, superstition. And players believe that. Fans believe that. Apparently networks don't. It's like Red Wings, don't say shutout when the game's still going on. Kind of tacky, I think. But at the same time, did it have an effect? Probably not. But still, don't take away from Verlander's great outing against the Angels.
Yeah, absolutely. That was great to see. It's almost like you were in a time machine. You went back 2 or 3 years and saw the Justin Verlander old. You're not going to get the same one. It goes without saying that. You throw pitches as hard as he did for as long as he did. Some injury happens or something unfortunate happens. Obviously, he's not going to come back and have the same arm as he used to. But that was a huge bright spot. If there's one thing we could take out of this season was one, Miguel Cabrera still got it. He's going to have it for a while, clearly, especially after battling an injury, going for the Triple Crown. But also that Justin Verlander, it was a tough year, and it is a rebuilding year, and we still have a lot to do. But the fact that Justin Verlander is still relevant and is making his name more relevant in the organization for fans, for everything. So that was huge to see, and it was just a relief. I mean, when he initially started off, he didn't seem like he was going to be doing that well. Just clearly you could see that just with the rehab assignments and stuff like that and how it was handled. I think you and I both can agree that wasn't handled the best way. But yeah, he's doing better. That was terrific to see from the guy, and hopefully you just remember this, carry that momentum in the next season, because like you said, it's pretty much lost hope.
He has to be the ace. Mm-hmm. He's got to be the ace, especially not only for the money that he's making, but just for this young pitching staff with guys like Daniel Norris, who's unfortunately going to be out for what looks like the season, and Matt Boyd, and guys like that. And Simon's probably going to be gone at the end of the year. But Sanchez and Verlander need to take this rotation next year and just kind of mold it into, okay, we're going to lead, and we're going to lead by example, really. And if Randy Wolf's here next year, cool. If not, no big deal. He's 0-2, but his ERA is 2.57. He's been pitching all right in his 2 outings since they picked him up. But he's just a guy that they needed to save the bullpen. We couldn't have Drew Verhagen or Kyle Ryan or Buck Farmer, even though Farmer's in the rotation somehow. It's good to get those guys experience in a lost season, get them in there, get them pitching against big league talent. Sure, their ERAs are through the roof, but it's good to get them in. But Justin Verlander has taken it by storm. In his last 4 starts, he has a 0.73 ERA, and that's gotten for 13 starts on the year, that's lowered his ERA to 3.45 when it started up around 8. And Justin Verlander's back, and I'm very confident when I say it.
Yeah, good. I mean, if there's any Kool-Aid that we can drink coming out of this season, hopefully it's the Justin Verlander Kool-Aid that he's back and he's feeling better, and we're going to see a strong start, and maybe he'll start opening day next year.
All right, I promised some Kool-Aid drinking a couple weeks ago on the show, but that was if the Tigers were doing good. Obviously, they're a disaster area, so we're not going to drink the team's Kool-Aid. But if Justin Verlander pitches like he did on Wednesday this week, next week on the wrap-up, We're going to drink some Kool-Aid. We're going to have the behind the can't even talk, I'm so excited. The behind the scenes guys are going to come out. We're all going to sit right here. We're going to pour some Kool-Aid. We're going to drink it. And cheers to 2016, hopefully with a different manager.
Yeah.
Although it's not entirely Brad Ausmus's fault, I just don't think he's right for the job. I think they kind of threw him in there too early, just removed from the majors just a few seasons. And I think definitely maybe a AAA manager, just get his feet wet managing, learning, shadowing a guy, maybe a bench coach. And just see what the future holds with someone else. Maybe get a guy like Ron Gardenhire in, get a veteran staff that, I mean, I hate to say it, because I didn't like Jim Leyland when he was here, but I think it would have been a different outcome should Leyland have been the manager.
Absolutely. And then you go and look at things, little things that, is it the players or is it the lack of leadership in Ausmus's position? You look at what happened to Anthony Gose over the weekend with that, which he thought was the third out catch, and it wasn't. Does that happen with strength and leadership? Does that show that, they're pretty much phoning it in the rest of the season? Maybe not phoning it in per se, but sort of giving up and just it's not the same energy that you would normally get at the beginning of the season or a team that is making a pennant run. To me, that just initially I thought it's the talent, poor Ausmus. This was an unfortunate situation, especially replacing someone like Jim Leyland. But now I feel like if he was that type of leader, certain things wouldn't be going on. You wouldn't have the turbulence in the clubhouse on the bench. You wouldn't have issues like Gose. You wouldn't have the David Price issue as far as not knowing when he pitched. I think that goes to show the lack of leadership. And I think at the end, that's really going to bite Brad Ausmus and behind. And that's going to be you had your opportunity. Maybe it's time to press the reset button. Like you said, go back to the minors and, we'll look you up in 10 years and see how you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head with that. We're going to put the Tigers in our rearview mirror, and we're going to do a little brief talk about the Red Wings. The season's right around the corner. And a guy who really has been plagued by injuries his whole career, Johan Franzen, said personally he expects to be back for the season. He's been leading the offseason optional skates down at Joe Louis Arena. He's been their coach pretty much. Blashill's been watching from the stands, and Franzen's been leading all the younger guys. They've had some guys working out from Columbus, Boston, some local talent. Johnson was here, and guys are just skating at the Joe, having a good time, and Franzen's leading the way. Although they haven't been hitting at all, he's just getting his legs back, his conditioning, and from what I've heard and what I've seen, he's looked like the Franzen of old, but then again, he's not in contact situations. He could fold up again as soon as he gets hit, because it's been concussions that have been his problem, and you'll never know until you're out there. It could be a light hit. Like we saw last year, he kind of got tripped up, fell, and missed the rest of the year. So it's a very touchy kind of injury. But Franzen expects to be ready to go for the season for the Red Wings. I
hope so. And like you said, he's feeling loose. And I think it's going to matter as far as when he steps on the ice and, is he mentally ready? Yeah, it's easy to skate at practice and feel all right, feel comfortable. As soon as, that puck drops at center ice during a game, there's a likelihood of you're going to get hit playing hockey. I mean, that's how it happens. But look at last year, he came back and then that little skirmish with Phil Kessel happened. He wasn't defending himself. He was pretty much, just being run by Phil Kessel.
And then what did Phil Kessel say? Didn't he say, bring your purse next time or something along those lines?
So it's easy to get excited about that, but I really don't think that there's too much to get excited for us once the season starts, even the preseason. I mean, I know the guys aren't going 100%, at least, the season vets aren't going 100%, but once that season starts and you're in the mix of things and we'll see. I really want him to come back. I really want the old Johan Franzen. I liked him. Especially when he was hot. The Wings were hot. So we'll see. I hope he can pull through and be healthy and shake that whole concussion bug. But we'll see.
Franzen's one of the streakiest players in the NHL, and we've seen it even in years such as last year when he's scoring in 7-8 games in a row, getting a couple goals a game. But he's a guy that the Wings need. They really do. People rag on him all the time, sometimes myself included, just Franzen really, is he playing? He's on the first line. The game slows down when the puck gets on his stick. He's a guy, it's like him and Cleary are just like the punching bags for the Red Wings fans. And I think that's time to stop. I really think Franzen deserves more, although he hasn't really proved it just from staying healthy in the last couple of years. I think he has earned himself some respect in the city of Detroit from the fans, from his playoff performances alone. He's one of the best playoff players in the recent history for the Red Wings. He's just unbelievable, and he's so skilled, but it's just a matter of staying healthy, and that's really what it comes out to. And I think preseason is a great time for him. A lot of people don't like the preseason. Obviously, we know what's happening with the NFL and guys getting hurt. But I think preseason hockey is completely different. It's for guys to make the team, impress the coaches, and guys who are coming off injury to just kind of get their legs back. They don't have to play the entire game, but get a couple shifts a period in and just kind of get yourself back into game situations. And because there's nothing like, you won't know in practice until you get into a game and see how you feel. And I think if he can play 4 or 5 preseason games of the 8, I think it'll be great for the team and great for Franzen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's frustrating too. Another thing, if you're a Detroit Red Wings fan, is you're used to seeing your team getting pushed around. Yeah, we had the enforcers like McCarty, that whole grind line, but we never really had that big tough guy. And to see your team get pushed around, you sort of rely on the bigger guys. Justin Abdelkader. I mean, even Franzen would stick up for him for the most part. He was always in the mix of things, so it's easy to get not only mad at Franzen not putting up the numbers, but also shine away from just the physicality. That's what I'm looking for. So when he's not doing that, he's not putting points up on the board. It's more just like a warm body on the ice. So, if he's not being aggressive and physical, all right, that's one thing. Then perform by throwing points on the board, assists, goals, what have you. We just need production out of him. And if he wants to stay here and he wants to have a good run with the coach, with the organization, more importantly with the fans, you have to do one of the two, points or aggressiveness. And it doesn't look like the aggressiveness is going to come out, especially with head injuries. So put some points on the board.
Exactly, and a guy who really broke out last year was Justin Abdelkader. He's now in a contract season, and I expect great things from him going forward. He's kind of taken the whole Thomas Holmstrom aspect of the game, but with more skill. He's faster, he's more skilled, he can skate better, he can deke, he can shoot, and he still gets gritty in front of the net, takes a lot of abuse. He can fight, he can win fights, he can get under guys' skins. You can put him skin, and he can put him out there against some of the best talent on the other team, and he gets under their skin a lot like a Luke Glendening or a Darren Helm. But I think Abdelkader's really going to break out more this year than he did last year and earn himself a pretty payday.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, initially when he jumped on board, I really wasn't the biggest Justin Abdelkader fan. But, Mike Babcock knew what he was doing. He supplemented him in with some of the greatest players in the league and the team. And, look at him now. He's so universal as far as, like you said, physicality. He can hold his own. He's going to stick up for the younger guys. He's going to stick up for his line mates, and that's huge. It's nice to see that from a Detroit Red Wing. He's tough. He can put points on the board also. He makes some great passes. He receives some great passes for goals, and I'm really on board. I'm excited, especially, contract season. It's time to show up and shine. You got to earn those big bucks. So, yeah, hopefully he really impresses us again this year.
And then one last controversy, the goalies. You have Jimmy Howard, who's been there, done that, the veteran. And you got the youngster Peter Mrazek, who took the bull by the horns again in the postseason and stood on his head, shut out Tampa Bay, 3 consecutive shutouts for Tampa in the last 3 years. The only 3 times they were shut out was all Peter Mrazek and the Red Wings. I think Mrazek deserves a shot, and I think Blashill's going to give him that shot. But at the same time, what do you do with Jimmy Howard? That's a big contract to be charting faceoffs on the bench. I think they're going to actually split more than you're going to have a number one. It reminds me a lot of 2008 when you had a 1 and a 1B, 1A, 1B with Chris Osgood, Dominic Hasek. Although I don't think this is quite the caliber of level as that, it's still 2 number 1 goalies, and that's a good problem to have should Jimmy Howard get his swagger back, if you will. Because I think when he's on, he's streaky. He'll make some of the best saves, but let up some of the biggest BS goals that I've ever seen. But I really would love to root for Jimmy Howard, but I love Peter Mrazek as well. I think it's a good problem to have in Hockey Town.
Yeah, it's a terrific problem to have. Maybe they could find a new way of the goaltending situation. Like you said, you have 2 number 1s. That's huge. Maybe we get off on, it's nice to have a nice, solid reserve goalie, regardless of who the number 1 is and the number 2 is. But you're in good hands should your number one goalie have to be replaced by the number two. And I think the last playoffs against Tampa with those shutouts that Mrazek had, that was huge. And it's a real big stepping stone for him, his confidence. And hopefully, we talked earlier last year about Jimmy's confidence. We'll see how that goes. I mean, to me, it's more of a mental problem. So if he can get over that and feel more comfortable, between the pipes, we're going to be a team to be dealt with. And I think that's good. Be a good thing.
I really do think so in this Eastern Conference. It's going to be a tough season. But another show in the books, and hopefully we'll have a more update on the Lions roster next show, and hopefully we'll have some Tigers victories, and maybe we'll drink the Justin Verlander Kool-Aid. But thank you for watching another episode of The Wrap Up. For Dan Myers, I'm Nick Buckler.